Hey Sheepdogs, welcome to the Sheepdog Project. Doc here. Tim, of course, is on the road. The best thing about Tim is that he is Tim, which means he's always busy, which means sometimes he cannot be here. But do not fear, because sitting in for him right here by my side is none other than Mr. Joe Rambo Biggs himself. Welcome to the Sheepdog Project, my friend.
What's going on, man? Thanks for having me.
Good, man. So we're sitting here on a delightful day here at the Mesquite Creek Outfitters in beautiful Georgetown, Texas, right off the square. And we're just gonna talk, because this is our first time getting to know one another.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna shoot the shit and see how things go. So
It's nice outside.
It is. It's a great day. This is a great Texas. See, there's a couple of times in Texas where it's great to be here because you're just not dying.
Yeah.
So, and this is one of them. This is like the calm before the storm. So It's just, I rode my bike over today. Perfect weather for that, because you're just not dying every time that you're at a stoplight. But we're going to be paying for this in another 2 weeks. It's going to be typical Texas in another couple weeks, and the bugs will be out, and it'll be hot as balls and completely unbearable. But
I like it hot outside. I like when it's hot outside and freezing cold inside.
yeah, that's how I like it too. I like to keep, especially the house at night. It drives my wife crazy, because I would rather have the house completely freezing and have just the blankets just piled up on top of
Oh yeah, that's what I
with
do.
my face sticking out, freezing. Because to me, that's ideal sleeping weather. It reminds me of deployment.
Yeah, when I was in El Paso at Fort Bliss, I was at 1st Armor Division for a while, and I used to sleep in the desert out there on top of the Paladin. I was the only guy that would sleep outside. Everyone else would stay inside, and I loved just being inside that sleeping bag and then leaving my face open and have my face freezing cold, the rest of my body just hot as hell under there.
You know, there's something special about sleeping outside in the desert too, because your view is completely unlimited. You're away from all the lights of the city. There's no pollution out there. You can see all the stars. That's I grew up in the high desert of Southern California, but we go out and on weekends going coyote hunting or whatever, and sleeping in the back of the truck or sleeping on the ground. Usually in the back of the truck, 'cause it's a little bit better for the snakes. And just looking up at the stars, where the only thing that's interfering with your vision is your own campfire.
I still haven't done any coyote hunting yet.
Yeah,
I really want to go do it.
yeah, it's important. It's important to keep that balance, because I think more southern Texas, I think they have a little bit of bigger problem with it. Of course, the feral hogs here are a problem everywhere, so that's what everybody tends to concentrate on. But in California, the coyotes are a huge problem a lot of places. Of course, mountain lions are a problem, and especially as suburban sprawl has gone on, and people move out there with their pets, and a lot of people put their cats out for the night, and they don't tend to come back the next day because of stuff like that. So what about you? Where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in a town called Gastonia, North Carolina. It's outside of Charlotte. Grew up in Charlotte, in Clemson, South Carolina, in Charleston, South Carolina, back and forth. My mom was in college while working at a college. So she was going for degrees, and at this point she's got masters and doctorates out the wazoo. I mean, she's in her 70s, and I don't think she'll ever stop going for degrees. So I've always grown up in a college environment my entire life. I was homeschooled for a while, and I would spend my adolescent days on college campuses, maturing a lot quicker and learning computers as we're all evolving into the internet and all this stuff's coming. I just get to sit there and watch it all happen, advance on campus. So it was really interesting having that. And then my dad was a Marine, a Vietnam era guy, and he's a complete and total psycho. So, I grew up watching the movie Rambo, and that's where the nickname came from, because my only thing was I just wanted to watch Rambo. I didn't give a shit how many times I saw it. Just put that in front of me, and I would stop, bitching or anything like that, and it was just made me the happiest person in the world. So that's kind of how that all came about.
So how old were you when you first enlisted in the military?
I first enlisted I did my MEPS and all that about 19, and then I went in. I was at Fort Bragg by the time I was 20, and then I deployed 6 months later.
Okay. What year did you go in?
2003.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the war was going
really kicking off.
Yeah. So it was a little bit. My generation was a little bit different. I went in 1984, so I was a Reagan Ranger.
That's when I was born.
Yeah, that makes me feel good. So I went in the area of the Cold War, where it was like, oh well, there might be something like what you see going on in Lebanon, or there might be something like you see going on in Grenada, but it's going to be, something like that. There was never the idea, and I was in the Ranger Battalion at the time too, so of course the concept always is we're going to go somewhere, we're going to kick ass for 72 straight hours, and then we're going to go home.
Yeah.
A little bit different for your generation. I mean, you 100% knew what you were signing up for on day one, that this is a protracted war. This is a generational war that's going to be going on probably way, way, way after we're on the ground. So
it was interesting because most people in my family were Marines, and I just want to do something different. I got sick and tired of hearing my brothers or my dad or people basically telling me the exact same story about the island and then Camp Lejeune and the same stuff over and over again. I was like, I just want something different. So I was like, I almost went and signed up at the Marine Corps, and I was like, screw this. I got to do my own thing. I need my own story. So I went over to the Army one, and that was it. I literally walked in. I think I made this guy the happiest recruiter in the world because I said, dude, I'm signing up today. I just want combat, and I want to go to Iraq. I'm sick and tired of hearing about people not enlisting. They need help. I was like, what do you guys need help in right now? And he goes, well, we need artillery. And I go, screw it, man. Put me in. Let's go.
Boom.
And that was it. I mean, it was basic training a few days after that, and, just on to brag and then deployed within a year,
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, that's definitely a different experience than I went through. But, I got to see kind of all of the generations, the 80s, 90s, and on into the 2000s. And I remember on my last deployment sitting down with some guys from my old company. I actually ended up deployed and attached back to 1st Ranger Battalion, not as a medical asset, and telling those guys, don't let anybody ever sit you down and tell you, all this, back when it was hard stuff, because what you guys are doing today is just amazing, and you guys 100% knew what you were signing up for from day one. You're doing amazing things, and it's always interesting to me as somebody who spent 3 decades in the military to see people who came in at all these different times and their different perspectives, and they came in. It's always really interesting. So how once you got out, how did you get, you're involved, of course, in journalism. Some would even say guerrilla journalism. How did you happen to get involved in that?
So when I was deployed in Afghanistan, it was the summer of 2008. I had a journalist embedded with me named Michael Hastings. He's no longer alive anymore, died a few years ago, June 18th. And he was kind of an inspiration. He was he was the first journalist on a deployment that I ever kind of connected with, where I didn't feel like this guy was out to, dick me and the unit over and, write some hit piece and make us look like, baby killers or some crap.
Right.
You typically see happen.
Get his Pulitzer and doesn't care if he has to step on
exactly. And I didn't get that from him. And it kind of evolved over a few months, and he kept extending his stay with us out there. And this guy was ballsy, man. We would get attacked on the border of Pakistan at this place called BSP 7 in the Coast Province, and I'm sitting there shooting, and he's just standing up there and got the camera on me and focused on what's going on, never flinching, never scared, shaking, anything like that. I was like, this is a ballsy guy. This isn't like any journalist I've ever seen. They usually go running and hiding and screaming and crying, or like that one video where the guy shoots the M4 and he's like, ah! It wasn't like that. I was like, this guy's got something. I was like, so over time he was like, man, if you ever get out of the military, you should try to go into journalism. He's like, you kind of have what it takes for that. And I go, we'll see. I was like, I don't ever plan on getting out. And I ended up getting out, and I called him up, and I did a few things. I was on Fox, and then he ended up dying, and I was on Megyn Kelly talking about it, and I got approached by InfoWars in Austin, and they were like, hey, let's interview you for our show. And I go, sure. I didn't know who they were. And went on the show, and the guy who owns it, Alex, calls me and goes, I'd like you to come down here. And I go, sure, I've never been to Austin, Texas, why not? So I come down there, and the guy goes, I want you to be a journalist for us. He's like, I'm going to send you to crazy places, and I just want you to stand in front of the camera and tell us what it is you see. He's like, that's all you have to do. And I go, I've never been to school for that. He's like, dude, we're going to put a camera on you and just tell the truth. I go, shit, why not? I'll give it a shot. And it kind of became an addictive thing. Like, I lost my true passion was being in the military. I loved it. And I was able to find something else where I can still kind of get my adrenaline rush. My first big thing I did was the Ferguson riots, and I was there for 3 months. One day I flew back because we had to change out camera guys because they were just like, I got kids, this is too dangerous, I don't feel like dying over this. And I felt so weird, almost like leaving a deployment. You know how you have that angst or whatever, you feel like you're leaving your brothers behind. I hopped right back on that plane the same day and went right back to Ferguson. I was like, I can't not be here right now.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was there doing something good, because most journalists were too scared. No one was showing what was going on, and people, quite frankly, were lying about what was going on.
Right, and I noticed that it when you've been somewhere and you know how news stories get distilled, and you can tell when a reporter is getting that second and third hand information for somebody, and it's almost not what that person is saying, but what they're not saying.
Yeah.
That you can kind of see, oh, there's some obvious holes here. Why is this reporter not seeing that there's some obvious? Why is he not asking this follow-up question? And you were doing real journalism. You were going down there, seeing it with your own eyes, seeing it firsthand, and reporting exactly what was happening.
But I got to see behind the scenes what you're saying, and it was really interesting, because this is the first time I kind of realized there was like this whole matrix type thing within the media. You know, it's not everything that you see and hear is what it actually is. It's something else. You know, and I would see the police officers come and hand a piece of paper at the end of the night and go, okay, this is what happened today. And they go, oh, okay, that's what happened. And then they just read it. Like today, no gas was used. No rubber bullets were shot. No shots were fired. Nothing like this. And I'm sitting there going, I have footage of all that literally just happening over the last course of 2 or 3 hours. Mm-hmm. You guys are bold-faced lying. And ABC is sitting there going, well, today, there's 0 reports of shots fired or tear gas used on crowds or anything like that. No violence whatsoever. It's an overall peaceful day. And I'm sitting there like, my eyes, you can see the blood from so much gas. Mm-hmm. You can see the veins. And my face was swollen up. And I mean, my whole body smelled like it. You know what I mean? I couldn't stand within 5 feet of you without you kind of going, this guy smells horrible because of all the gas on me. And that's when I realized that everything that I've been watching in the news and stuff was more than likely complete and total BS. And now here I am. I've covered the stuff that happened in Paris, in Brussels. I've gone to these Muslim no-go zones like in Molenbeek. Just me and like another guy walking around through there. And
you mean the ones they keep telling us don't actually exist? Yeah.
That do exist. You know, and I'm putting myself in these situations and I'm covering these stories, and I go back at the end of the night and I that's my favorite thing to do is, okay, I was just here. I was just in San Bernardino. I saw what happened all day. I saw what the police were doing. I saw this and that. And then I go home and watch the news. It's complete opposite. Mm-hmm. Of what's being said, you know, and in Pulse nightclub in Orlando when I went there for that, same thing. Some of the complete top of just crazy stuff, opposite of what was going on. And I was like, you know, there's an actual need for someone doing this and going out there and actually calling these people out on their BS and showing people what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes me wonder, you know, now, we have social media, we have YouTube, we have all these outlets for, you know, the alternative journalism that can tell these real stories. And it makes you wonder, in years past, I mean, we know that news has always been slanted, but how pasteurized was it for all these decades before? How much real history did we miss out on because we didn't have those outlets that we have today? And now, like you said, the truth can be told because you don't have to go to ABC or NBC or CNN or Fox or anybody else and them look at you and go, yeah, I'm sorry, that doesn't fit. That doesn't fit the narrative that we're telling. Of course, they'd say it in a little bit different words. So no, we're not going to tell that. You can go directly to the people with it, you know. And all it takes is looking at the number of subscribers on these YouTube channels, the following that you have on social media, to say that, you know, people have woken up to realize that, you know, they've been fed a lie for a long time, and the truth is out there.
How much of our past is fake? It's not even real.
Yeah, well, you know, we've always said history is written by the victors, right?
Yeah.
And we know, you know, a lot of things. A lot of revisionism has gone on, you know, and then it tends, of course, to swing the other way. History was written by the victors, and then history is rewritten by those who whine the most and want to rewrite it, you know, and they've gone back and rewritten history books, swinging completely the other way. Was Columbus a saint? No, absolutely not. Was he the devil? No, probably not. Was he an opportunist? Sure. Did he have some pretty good ideas? Sure. But, you know, should we now... he never should have been canonized in his history books, and he should not be demonized now. I mean, he was what he was.
Just ripped down his statues. They'll get rid of it.
Ripped down his statues and refused to have a day in his honor and everything. There was a great Sopranos episode that dealt with that. It's one of my favorite all-time Sopranos episodes. But now, you know, thankfully, there is an outlet. I mean, you know, and we're speaking on one of those mediums right now. I mean, podcasting is just it's amazing how many people that it reaches.
Well, liberalism right now is doing everything they can to destroy the past that we have. I mean, you look at all these statues being removed, and our history. I mean, however grim or dark it may be, it's still our history. Those who don't, learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. And I just don't get how these people understand that. You can remove all these statues, you can remove flags from capitals, but it's still not going to change the past.
Yeah. Well, Pharaoh had Moses' name struck from every obelisk and tablet, and we still know who he was.
Yes.
It's the more you try to suppress that, the more people are going to pass on that history. I'm going to have to back up a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. But no, I think we live in a golden era, and I hope that today's generation kind of appreciates it. What everything that's gone before and the opportunities that they have now to hear every side of every story. And nobody. These are arguments we get in on social media all the time. Nobody should get their news, should get their information from one source. They just shouldn't do it. It's you should always first person accounts, and I get into this in my investigative work on hunting Hitler. I don't necessarily want to read old newspaper clippings. I want to, if at all possible, I want to talk to living witnesses, or I want to see physical proof, or talk to the daughter of the guy that saw this, or the daughter who was this escaped Nazi, and get the information directly from them. Because even at the time, we know during that time period, every government around the world had a different image that they wanted to reflect, both during the war and post-war. And we see the same thing today, and exactly what you're talking about, people trying to go back and revise history and sweep things under the rug and paint things in a different light. And I think in the end, I think ultimately people are a lot smarter than they give them credit for. And I think in the end, it tends to come around and bite them in the ass. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I agree. I just hope that when I look back, when hopefully I'm a grandfather one day, I survived that long, that this was like the year of the crybabies or something like that. I mean, the stuff that we see every day is just ridiculous. This election's the craziest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. Here we are, it's almost May, and Trump's been president how long? And people still just can't quite fathom that, and they're literally out there assaulting people. Verbally, physically, because other people have different points of views than them. I mean, this is one of the craziest times to be alive, just to see such a disorder. I mean, liberalism is a mental disorder.
Well, everybody who, this tremendous pushback that we've seen, it has been, we're coming out of a pretty divisive 8 years, and the camps are very, very clearly split at this point. And I look at people on both sides. I don't care which side of it you're on. It's like, if you're getting out there and you're rattling your saber and you're jumping up and you're making a lot of noise, that's all well and good. What's your desired end state? What do you possibly hope to gain by that, other than having a YouTube video where you got water hosed by the police, or you got taken away in cuffs and you made a name for yourself? It's like, do you really think going out there and flinging feces on a police car, or yelling at people, or hitting somebody that you didn't agree with and then calling them a Nazi, what does that get you?
I just think it's hilarious how they say that we're alt-right, or we're like white nationalists, or we're literally Hitler because we have a different point of view. But not once have I ever met someone with an opposing view and go, I'm going to go hit this guy. I mean, that's never been my first instinct, but yet almost every time I cover these protests and I go out, I've literally got to get into an altercation because someone tries to assault me. It's just mind-blowing.
I think there's been this justification, that the thing that I keep seeing kicked around on social media is, well, if I could go back to 1933 and punch Hitler in the face, I would. It's like, well, if you paint everybody you disagree with as Hitler, and that's the justification that you're using, well, yeah, okay, but you're just taking everybody that you disagree with and you're just saying, well, they're Hitler because I disagree with them.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it goes back on what I said before. In the end, I think that's ultimately what's going to defeat people, because
you've got a lot of people to hunt.
Yeah.
Because we're all Hitler.
Well, yeah. Over time, people are going to see, well, people who are maybe on the fence, or maybe even lean to that side, are going to go, well, I know that guy and he's not Hitler, and their ideas aren't that much different from mine, and they're not talking about rounding people up and putting people into camps or doing anything like that. And an argument that I had on social media about a week ago was like, some people was like, well, there is no freedom here. Okay, there obviously is, because you're spewing your crap on social media and nobody's showing up to your house to take you away. So it's pretty obvious that you've got at least some level of freedom. Maybe you're choosing to, freedom is your ability to say what you think, not your ability to make other people believe what you think.
Yeah.
There is no onus on anybody else to agree with you. You're guaranteed the opportunity to talk. You can go, we're right off of Georgetown Square. You can go put up a soapbox, stand in front of that building, and yell all day long. Nobody's obligated to listen to you. So just because somebody goes walking by talking on their cell phone doesn't mean your freedom was infringed upon. It means just nobody gave a shit about what you had to say, basically. It's weird how we got to this point, too. When we talked a lot about history, and Tim and I talk a lot about the greatest generation, and the hard times that made for hard men, that made for easy times, that now are making for weak men.
And buns.
Yeah, man buns. we talked about that on this show too. You get to this point where we call them the snowflakes, we call them everything else, and it's kind of the antithesis of what Tim and I do at Sheepdog Response. When we talk about this on this podcast quite a bit, it's the total sheep mentality. It's we're all going to get in line, and we're going to get till we get what we want. Till somebody comes around and puts food in the trough, and we're not going to take responsibility for our personal protection. We're not going to take our personal responsibility for where our food comes from or where we shit or anything else.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit disturbing. I look at, I've got a one son in his early teens, one about to enter into his teens, and I emphasize to him all the time. I'm like, you need to be, don't look to the 20 years in front of you, because you need to be self-reliant. You need to be looking back farther than that. And I'm trying to instill those values in them, and it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah. Because you can't be around them all the time, and they have to go out there in this world full of extremely weak people now.
Yeah. It's hard to see. It's of course the greatest generation that we talked about. They're fewer and fewer every year. You saw the footage of the one guy who, last person from his task force marching in the parade this year, and it's almost good that they didn't live to see it. To look and go, this is what I stormed the beaches of Normandy for.
My buddy's at Arlington Cemetery right now, and he sent me some pictures. And he saw an 82nd memorial thing or whatever, and took a picture. And he just goes, "Thanks for your service." I was like, "Oh man, cool, bro, thanks." And then he sends me another message.
Can you move your mic up a little bit? I think it's scratching your beard. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then he sends me another message. He's like, "There's a whole bunch of kids running around over the graves right now, just screaming and yelling." And I'm like, "Really?" Mm-hmm. I was like, "That's just ridiculous." I mean, I knew at a young age, you don't do that.
Yeah.
You have respect for the people who've gone out there and do that, and there's just no respect anymore. There's no more patriotism. It's almost bad to be patriotic and have a love of country and the want to provide for your family, for natural resources, to go out and hunt and get your own food. I don't want to go to the grocery store and buy meat that's been wrapped in cellophane. I want to go out there and get it and have that connection. And we just don't have that manliness anymore. It's weird. When I go out in Austin, which is like the liberal capital of the world, it's almost like masculinity has died off, especially in that area. I mean, everyone's prancing. Mm-hmm. It's like a couple deers just hopping through a field.
Mm-hmm. In skinny jeans.
Yeah, skinny jeans and man buns and lattes or something. You don't see anyone out there looking like they've had like a hard day of work and been welding and been working with their hands or doing something. It's just kind of like, it's just like, what the hell's going on? I remember growing up and with my dad and seeing older guys, and you would see like holes in the jeans and like giant forearms because they've been out there shoveling all day, and you're like, these people are out there doing something. And now it's just like, everyone, you can't tell the difference between a 16-year-old girl and a grown man in some of these areas you go to.
Mm-hmm. I remember growing up, and the generation that you talked about, your dad's generation, the Vietnam generation, and you'd pull into a gas station, and of course back then there was no such thing as self-service gas, so somebody pumped your gas, and all the guys that you saw working at the garage and pumping your gas and doing all this stuff, and my dad was one of those guys who, we worked on his own vehicles. You didn't take your vehicle. So you went down to the auto parts store and you said, I need a such and such part. I need a tie rod coupler for a 1966 El Camino. Well, we're going to have to order that. Okay, well, we'll be back in a week. And then you come back in a week and they bring it out to you. And then you pulled it up in the driveway and you put it on yourself. And I can remember rebuilding a couple of motors with my dad and of course he worked a full-time job too. So it's like, well, these are going to be your Saturdays, son. If you want to drive this car, well, you're going to blow some Saturdays with me till we get this done. And that's basically what we had to do. And I don't think you have that now. You don't have the self-reliance.
Yeah.
And people talk about, it's almost, well, it's not even almost. It's looked down upon to the point, when you hear people make these, I call them the dog whistle comments, the rural voters or the blue collar voters. It's like, okay, so in other words, and the not college educated. Okay, so the people who are working for a living, the people who are getting up before the sun comes up and bloodying their knuckles all day and coming back, people who know what it's like to have your hands so dirty that you scoop out that lava clean and smear it all over your hands to break the grease down and get it down, and then you're belittling them because at the end of the day they went in and when they got off work, they didn't vote early voting. They voted when they got off work at 6 o'clock in the evening, right before the polls closed, and they pulled the lever for Trump. And then you see people get on the news and they belittle that. Well, when the rural voters and the non-college educated voters, and it's like, in this nation, when did that become a bad thing? When did the people that work to put food on the table for their families, to do an honest day's work and never ask for a handout, when did that become a disparaging term?
I've grown up around colleges, like I said, my entire life. That's not a bad thing to not go to college.
No.
The BS they spew there and then the brainwashing that goes on, it's just like, my mom, when she, growing up, she's like, I don't want you to get like a regular degree. She's like, you need to go into something like where you can, like a trade school. Mm-hmm. So I ended up going to school for welding. Mm-hmm. Got a degree in welding and did all that. And that's far more satisfying than anything else than working on a computer in my mind. I mean, sitting out there and, and doing stick welding and TIG welding and MIG welding is just the most amazing thing when you kind of get down to the scientific aspects of what's going on.
Much more useful than a gender studies degree.
Yeah. Sorry, there's only 2 genders.
Yeah, that should be a pretty short final. How many genders are there?
Yeah, I'm actually getting that made into a T-shirt right now. And that's going to be interesting just to watch minds explode in downtown Austin on that one. Yeah.
That's I had a tweet that got a lot of retweets a couple weeks ago. I said, gender is not a social construct, but the term cultural appropriation is a social construct. Because there's no such thing.
Yeah.
God, I lost my train of thought there for a minute.
Islamophobia is a survival skill.
I
tweeted that one and got a lot of hell for that.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Tim and I talked a little bit about that, about different types of profiling when we talked about our one of our security podcasts where we talked about situational awareness, and it was reflected in some of the social media comments that we got, and reflected in some of the iTunes reviews that we got. That some people pleased with it, some people not so much pleased with it. But
it's like if I went surfing, and I'm a surfer, I've been surfing since I was little. If I get go surfing and I get bit by a shark, I'm not going to be very accepting of sharks, more than likely. Some people, screw it, and more than likely most people are going to be kind of traumatized by that experience and kind of be a little bit more hesitant of maybe going back in the ocean. I don't know how I would react. I've never had it happen to me, but I don't know how I would react. Mm-hmm. But, when people have been in these, these cities or these places like Khalees or whatever, and overseas and these different Muslim no-go zones, or in these parts of Europe that are just completely and totally being overran, and there's rape and all this stuff going on, you can't blame these people for being a bit hesitant when they see someone like that, when they're constantly being treated like crap by them.
Mm-hmm. Everybody's a product of their own personal history. So, like you say, if you've been bit by that shark once, when you see that fin in the water again, you're not going to think that's a dolphin that I'm going to go play with, probably. Yeah. Pretty typically. So what else you got going on?
Well, me and my buddy David started a media company called Borderland.
David is here, but he's not on mic because I only have 2 headsets because I didn't know David was going to be here. So what do you guys got going on? Tell me about your company.
Okay, so the company we started is a new alternative media, thing that where it's going to be myself. Basically, I want to start getting back on the road again, traveling to all the dangerous places that are going on. We've got a big story that we're working on. We just got new big intel today on something that's going to have to do with the border town between El Paso and Juarez, and a crazy trafficking kind of ring, a thing that's going on that we're going to go down into Juarez going pretty soon and go and investigate. And it's going to have some really big implications and make, I think, world news when we break it. I think it's going to be one of the biggest. I think whatever is in the news at that time, whatever's big in the cycle, will be completely forgotten about and will dominate. It's that big, and it's disgusting what we found out. So our goal is to start breaking stuff like that. We've got another person that's going to be on board with us that's, been in journalism for a long time as well. She brings a whole lot of other stuff, a lot of sources within the military that she's met over the years in journalism. And we're going to start bringing people on and try to create this and grow this business. And basically our idea of it is, we don't control anybody. If you've got a thing you want to go talk about it. Go write about it. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not your editor. You're your own editor. You're a grown-ass person. So, yeah. And it doesn't matter where you work, usually. I mean, being in media, I've always seen how there's always like a spin to something or a direction that they want something to go in. And I just want someone to go, okay, go cover this and then write about it. And when I learn about it, I want to see it from the report or from the article. It's not my business to go in there and tell you how to do it or anything like that, because if that's what you saw, then that's what you saw.
Right.
I'm not looking for any outcome or anything like that. So
that's another thing. I know you can't hear me, but that's the one thing is that there's no strings attached to this. I want the company, but we wanted to do like this, like that. No, I give them ownership to part of the company, and so just run with it.
Yeah. So what David's saying is that he's talking about that basically Joe, anything that Joe wants to run down, he has freedom to do so, and that's and that's the way journalism. That's the way it's supposed to be. Yeah. That's back at the onset of the printing press, I got to imagine that was what it was like. Back. And even to the point, back when when messages were carried from town to town by somebody that was just going around telling everybody, but now every new, it's almost as if from the time that they figured out that people group themselves in all these different political and cultural tribes, well, we can market ourselves towards that. It's like all the news organizations did that, and they decided which particular niche that they wanted to carve out, and this is what we're going to market ourselves to. And then it morphed into the fact that, well, now we want to shape history. Now we want to put our own spin on it, because we're people too, and we have our own opinions and our own goals and our own way that we want to see that the world go. And that's pushed more and more. And I don't care which organization they're working for. They have these goals, and they're pushing things just more and more towards that. I always tell people too, you can tell a lot about yourself by whichever news organization you want, what the commercials are. So apparently I need a self catheter, and I need a MyPillow, and I need to be buying gold is what I've learned about myself from watching the news.
Yeah, I kind of see myself as like a modern day Hunter S. Thompson. I like the gonzo journalism aspect of
and as left as he was, I think if he came back around, if you could give him a shot of something to make him 25 years old again, I think he'd be a conservative.
Yeah. For instance, the other day I did the stupidest thing any human being could possibly ever do, but in the name of journalism, I decided I'd go do this, and I wanted to, I saw this video where this guy created this company, makes body armor. And I see this guy stand up and he goes, I created this company, my name's Mike, and I want to prove that my product's good, so I'm going to get shot. And I go, wow, this is intense. I was like, no, it's not going to happen. And you just see this guy stand in front of him and shoot him 4 times in the chest, and I'm like, come on. That is intense. And I was like, I've got to try this. And yeah, I know it's probably the dumbest thing in the world to do, and I've got a daughter being born any day, but I went down there and did it, met up with these guys, and I wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to, how can I tell someone what it's like to be shot with a bulletproof vest on if I've never had it happen? So I went and did it.
Yeah, I watched the video. That was pretty impressive.
But I mean, it's not like I just went down there and put on a vest, and I didn't, study it all or test out other plates before I got to that one. I mean, there was definitely hours in advance of shooting at this thing, and obviously not the same plate because, the quality goes down after it's been hit, but they had a whole bunch of plates, and I just went through and tested them until I felt comfortable, and I was like, okay, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it was done in appropriate fashion. I didn't see a hold my beer moment in there anywhere.
Yeah.
So it looked like it was done in appropriate
I definitely
fashion.
didn't feel like drinking that day until the very end, it was like 11:30 at night. I told my wife, I was like, I got to go get a beer real quick. It's kind of hitting me right now how much of an idiot I am.
You made it through. You got a great story to tell, and you got video proof to back it up. So
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, is I want to go out and do stuff that people are not willing to go do. I want to go to Syria. I want to go back to Iraq. I want to go cover things that people, quite frankly, don't want to go do because it needs to be told, it needs to be talked about, and someone needs to go do it. So if not, I'm going to be told, by someone who passed it along to someone else, and now you were playing the telephone game, and it's been watered down so much I don't know what's happening.
there's not a lot of people out there like that in journalism that are willing to go that extra mile anymore because, like you said, they want to. There are those who paint themselves like that and try to portray themselves like that, but owning a couple of those Dan Rather photographer vests and crouching down behind a wall somewhere while somebody's literally shooting half a mile away, but it looks like, oh, we're right there in a gunfight.
Yeah.
That's a little bit different than from what you're talking about. And
I mean, if you, like I said, my daughter's going to be born, has to be by the 24th, so this coming Monday in just a few days. That's the day they're inducing. 1 week after that, I'm going to Juarez, and I'll be down there for 7 days.
Yeah.
And Juarez has gotten better, but now the last 3 days, there's been 8 to 10 murders a day, just right there on the border.
Yeah.
In that area, so it's definitely picking back up, and the gang violence or the cartel violence is picking up. So it's never an easy thing to do, but I tell you, when this comes out, and everything that we're chasing right now, the leads we have and the information, this will be something that'll make a lot of people's stomachs turn, and it'll make you very uneasy.
That's my wife's family is from the border, and of course, obviously I still have family down there on the border, and I'm always surprised at the things, when I go down there to visit, the things that I see, the things that I hear, the things that ICE agents that I talk to describe, and I'm always like, why is none of this in the news, not much less in national news? Like, I'm not even seeing this on KSAT out of San Antonio. Why is this not getting reported? And it's even gone to the point, I don't know if you've ever seen them, there's billboards on I-35 that says, "Don't believe the lie, Laredo is safe." Have you seen these?
Mm-mm.
It's like, so your answer to all the violence that's spilling over the border is to a propaganda campaign to convince people that there's not any real violence.
When you land in El Paso, you hear the mayor of El Paso literally go, "Welcome to El Paso, America's safest city."
Yeah.
And it repeats over and over again, and I'm like, no, I lived here. It's BS.
Yeah, it's completely not. And it's the debate that has raged back and forth during the election cycle and still today, with people talking about building the wall and everything else. And I've asked people, I'm like, okay, well, tell me literally one down. Let's say the wall didn't work or whatever it is, or let's say there's other thing. Tell me one downside to building the wall. And I have yet, the most recent straw that they've kind of grasped at in that is the bats and the birds are going to fly into it.
I heard,
Yeah.
I was reading an article, and the whole point of this company that David and I created was also to really highlight what's happening on the border, because there's a lot of stuff, like you said, that goes uncovered and untalked about. But one of the articles, it was, I can't remember the name or which one it was in El Paso, but they said the border wall is going to affect climate change.
Yeah.
The steel beams are going to heat up the atmosphere to a point that, I mean, that's just like the swamp gas.
You know what's funny about that, and we could do a whole show just talking about that, but they have actually proven that both solar panels and wind farms affect the climate.
Yeah.
That's actually been proven, possibly even more so than carbon emissions do. But
Yeah.
that's a whole can of worms that's beyond the scope of this podcast, so I'm not going to open up. But
I mean, I want to challenge anyone who's ever even been to the border to go down there. I mean, hit me up.
Yeah.
I know every single crossing spot, like the main ones, and every time I go down there, I catch human smuggling or drugs coming across. Tons, not like little packages. I'm talking like 7 or 8 guys coming across the river with giant satchels. I'm talking about as wide as this to here, over their back, and they're coming across and throwing into SUVs, going into parts under.
That's not their personal luggage. That's not a day laborer coming.
They're not
across.
Donald Trump pinatas.
Yeah.
That's heroin. That's coke. That's marijuana. That's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, there's an area just off the border where I go to deer hunt every fall, and the first time I went down there with my brother-in-law, who's a professional hunting guide, he said, what are you going to bring to shoot it? I said, I'm going to bring my Barnes Precision M4, and he goes, okay. He said, are you bringing your Glock? And I go, well, for to follow up with the kill shot, like for what? He goes, no. He said, because we're going to be moving through some brush. He said, you're going to want to have that. He said, because this property does join up to the border in a couple different spots. Yeah. And he said, we've found stuff. We found where people have dumped stuff. We found human remains on the property, everything else. And people, I think, have a lot of blinders on. I think that whole issue, and again, this is probably the most political this podcast has ever gotten, but having lived in Southern California, having lived in Southern Texas, having family in both places, the answer to this is for the Mexican government and the Mexican infrastructure to get their shit together, and then nobody would have to cross the border.
Yeah.
Or the only people that would need to cross the border, nobody would need to cross the border to work. People would only need to cross the border to
see friends, family.
Yeah, or to smuggle shit.
Yeah.
And then we would be 100% sure that the only people who are crossing are the bad hombres, as
I mean,
Donald Trump called them.
we created an environment where it was freebies. Why wouldn't people want to come and have that? I mean, when you have people who haven't fought for this country getting taken care of better than people who have, that's when there's a huge issue. And, I don't blame these people for wanting to take advantage of that. Why not? I mean, they're living in poverty. It sucks. Of course they're going to come up here. But the way to stop that and what's happening under Trump is we've kind of put a stop to these freebies and said, no, it's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
And illegal immigration's gone down, 70% now? Yeah. 70%. We just did a story on it yesterday. And the only thing that's not really changed is MS-13 gang violence has gone up.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that in Juarez now and all that, and we're going to go cover that. But it's interesting, man. Like I said, it's an area that definitely needs eyes on, and we're not getting enough of it. And I think people might start opening their eyes up a bit and understand why that border wall is necessary for the same reasons you said earlier. And hopefully we can shine that line on it and help people understand that.
Yeah, that's and this dovetails into something that we do talk about in this podcast a lot, and it's one of the basic tenets of our company is, we talk about situational awareness. And you can't have blinders on when it comes to knowing that a porous border is a legitimate threat. And it's a legitimate threat whether you live in Texas, whether you live in Arizona, Nevada, California, or whether you live in Chicago, New York, Ohio, anywhere else, because it's not limited to just the border states. They don't walk immediately across the border and set up camp.
Yeah.
It's, they go other places. And when I was part of the Joint Task Force and during the drug war in the 90s, we would have surveillance on little tiny planes that were literally nothing more than a giant fuel tank and a cargo compartment big enough to put $500,000 worth of drugs in, that were flying all the way from South America, coming all the way up, and not landing in southern states. I mean, they were, there might be a little refueling airstrip here and there, but they were coming way north.
Yeah.
And so this is a problem that's coming into neighborhoods everywhere, and people need to be aware of it. And they need to be aware that it's not just about socioeconomic stuff. It is about national security, and it's about personal security in neighborhoods. And you look at the Kate's Law and these other laws that they're trying to pass. I think it's Kate's Law, right?
Yeah.
That deals specifically with, we're talking about people that have been sent back across the border five, 8 times, who've been convicted of domestic violence, assault, all these other things, and they're just they're literally getting off the bus on the southern side of the border, grabbing something to eat and waiting for it to get dark and coming right back across again. If they're even waiting for it to get dark, because in many places it's that easy to come across the border.
Yeah, I've shown that. I don't know how many times.
Yeah.
I like Hereford, Arizona, for instance, is a spot just southeast Fort Huachuca on Thunder Mountain or whatever they call it. I think that's what it is, and it's just wide open, beautiful green looking pasture with just the river right in the middle, and it's just some barbed wire, like a couple of pieces of wooden posts and like a barbed wire on the top.
Yeah.
And all you do is just bend down, or if you're tall enough like him, probably just step over it, and you're good.
Yeah.
And that's it. And the Border Patrol guys, and this is under the Obama administration, when I saw, they're sitting there playing Angry Birds. Not that they're bad guys, but they've been told to just not do anything.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing that anymore, which is good, But there's so many places where you just walk over. There's not even stuff sometimes.
Yeah.
In El Paso, on the other side of, what is that mountain with the cross on top, Yeah, so right on the back side of that, the fence just goes to that, to each side. Yeah, so all you do is just walk up the hill. As long as you can walk up the hill and then come down the other side, you're right on I-10.
Wow.
You're there. And then you're at Fort Bliss and you're at UTEP right there, where it comes over, because it's
Crossover, love people from our side.
And then go back.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's about a 3/4 of a mile trek.
Jackson, but
Crazy. And again, this is stuff we don't even see it on local news. I mean, if you really want to be compassionate about the plight of not just the border, but going further south than that, you have to do something about that. And as long as we have a porous border, the cartels are going to take advantage of those orphan kids. They're going to take advantage of those families that, okay, fine. Oh, you want to help? You got a job somewhere in Wyoming, and you want help getting across the border? Well, that's fine. But dump all your personal belongings out. You're carrying this until we get across the desert and we can put it in a car somewhere. And that's the price you're going to pay. And, we think we hear Border Patrol, we think we hear ICE rolling up on us. Well, sucks to be you. And they take off. And that's always what they find when I worked with with JTF 6, that was a story that we heard all the time, was, right before you guys got here, or an hour before you guys got here, the Coyote said that they were going ahead to scout, and they never came back. And it's like, okay, because they had a scanner, or they had a cell phone, or whatever it is. They knew the deal. They knew that ICE was coming. So it's like, we're done. We're out of here. So and realistically, there's two of them hauling ass, running, traveling light. So they know that when we happen upon all these families who are hungry, dehydrated, obviously our priority has to be them. So we're not going to continue to pursue.
And some of these women that are coming across too are being raped by the coyotes. I mean, I stopped some girls from Honduras, I think, or something, or Nicaragua, and they were just in tears. And I mean, you could tell they looked like clothes had been torn and all this stuff. And I had a girl with me who's from Mexico City. She was translating. And I was like, what's going on? She goes, they said it was just a horrible trip. And I go, what, coming across the river? And she goes, no, what happened immediately before they were allowed to cross? And they kind of going into detail, so, it's screwed up. But, like I said, it's...
The human trafficking and everything else, it's just, I don't think people have any idea. I'm glad that you guys are on top of the story. I look forward to seeing it when it breaks. It's probably going to, things that a lot of people have... in the southern part of this state have known for quite some time and have talked about, even though it's never made the news. And now it sounds like it will. And
it's crazy when you're walking through like Laredo and you're like, I see a big tarantula. And I remember one day I just kind of got sidetracked and I saw this tarantula. I was like, man, that's a big tarantula. And I'm kind of following it or whatever. And I go towards where it starts to go into a tree, and there's like 6 guys just hiding behind grass. I was like, yeah, that was stupid of me to kind of lose my focus for a minute and act like this, because typically I'm kind of like, scanning the whole area and looking around. But it's just everywhere over there. I mean, if you don't see them crossing, they're already there for hours just waiting for dark. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, we saw kids with pouches under their shirts and stuff like that, and like, you don't know what the hell they got. It's a bad area. And when you talk to, you're part Mexican and you like Trump. And there's so many people in McAllen, like we talk to Hispanics for Trump in McAllen and stuff like that. There's so many people who want the wall, who are Hispanic, who have family members who live in, all kinds of Ixtapa or whatever. Yeah.
Now it's coming in, so they were trying to get away from that. It's people crazy. The criminals that
And they're seeing what they were fleeing from now.
Right.
Yeah, but then, most of the ones that did it legally, hate the people that did it illegally.
Yeah. No, I have definitely seen that myself. Spending a lot of time on the border. So how long are we gonna have to wait before we see this come out?
Well, I'm saying, I would say the max a couple months.
Couple months.
We're putting everything together, funds and all that. But,
Well, we've already got strong enough leads to get a good target and follow some stuff. There's a person who worked with this person who worked with him for years and years and years and has a lot of information on what this, let's say elected official has been engaged in for quite some time in El Paso. And it's very disturbing. And, we got another big lead today that there's another person who works with this guy who corroborates what this other guy is saying and has proof and has all this stuff. And it's just starting to build up, and hopefully it'll be at a point where, like I said, when it comes out, there can be no going back by any media outlet and trying to nitpick this apart or whatever like that. Or this guy, when he tries to save face, is not going to be able to come back from it because we have some pretty strong evidence of what's been going on. And to me, yeah, this guy's really well connected. He's the kind of person that can go into Juarez doing some screwed up stuff and go untouched.
Right.
And that's cartel area.
Yeah.
So, when you see someone like that walking around at their position on the U.S. side over there not being touched, they've got some connection. So
Yeah.
it's definitely not the safest thing in the world to do, but it's going to be worth it.
Well, good. I'm glad you guys are going to get some exposure to that. Where can people find you on the net, on social media or wherever?
Twitter, @RamboBiggs, RAMBOBIGGS. Facebook, Joe Biggs. Trust me, you'll know me when you see the picture. There's usually guns in my hand. And then BorderlandAlternativeMedia.com.
BorderlandAlternativeMedia.com. I'll have links to all that for everybody in the show notes. We're coming up on 53 minutes, so we're good on time, and plus the crowds are starting to come in and make a little bit of background noise, so I think that's probably a good stopping point.
Cool.
Joe, my brother, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it. David, very nice to meet you. Next time I'll have another mic for you as well. I'm going to close today, since we talked a lot about journalism, we talked a lot about freedom of speech. I'm going to close with a quote from George Washington that I think fits nicely. If the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. Remember that, everybody. And until next time, be a sheepdog.
You have been listening to the Sheepdog Project. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sheepdog Response. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent any larger entity, public or private.